What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Performance Playbook podcast. I'm joined here with the one and only Steele Johnson. Steele, how we doing?
Great. How you doing, Brando?
Not too bad. I'm actually super excited for this podcast. I'm glad we were able to set this up really quickly. And I think one big piece to this that I was super excited about was, again, the connection that I have and I've watched with, your perseverance through injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one big thing I really wanted to kind of dive in deep with you is, how you've been able to persevere through so much adversity. Because again, it's like, I thought my injuries and the things that I've kind of pushed through were pretty bad until, I get to look across or sometimes look to my left, doing synchro with you and, you're pushing through way more than I was. So, could you kind of just start to touch upon, or maybe we take it back to your kind of first big injury in my mind to what I've heard was you hitting the platform.
Yeah, we can go all the way back there. So I've been diving for 19 years now. I started at a young age, and with that, I started training full time at the age of 10. And with that full time training, I had this dream of going to the Olympics as a platform diver. So I started training platform at a super young age. And at the age of 12, an accident happened in training where I hit my head on the platform and it left a gash, almost ear to ear across the top of my head. And my coach at the time got in, on the stairs of the pool and held my head together until the paramedics got there. And, it's truly a miracle that I survived that incident. But it, it's something that can happen in sport, and it's unfortunate when it does. And, I was really lucky and blessed to walk away from that, but not just walk away from it. I really don't remember that accident happening. If I were to remember hitting my head at such a young age, I probably would have never gotten back into the sport. But because I don't remember it, I really wasn't terrified to get back on the platform. More so, I was excited. And so, yeah, that was a really big challenge getting back on the boards. And I didn't do that same dive, which was a 307 reverse 3.5 tuck off 10 meter for the first time for about a year and a half after the accident. But eventually I did get the dive back, and it became one of my best dives because from that experience, I learned how to do that dive with safe distance, learned how to master the basics of it so that I was comfortable up there, and was really confident that I would never hit my head on the platform again because of that experience. And that was, a super unfortunate thing to go through. But from that experience, I learned how to handle adversity and how to keep moving forward, even when the cards are stacked against me.
But I think the story is very interesting to me because you see a lot of people get spooked by substantially less than that. Maybe they think about a certain correction for their arms going into a twist. Like I've had a scenario to where that kind of spooked me for a bit. And, it takes a long time to get through and really work through like a lot of situations like that. It sounds like because you don't necessarily remember that, you were able to push through. But I think the key piece there that I always see is like, you accept that it happened, and then you take the necessary steps forward to kind of either digest what happened and then build upon that, or really just go, hey, there's nothing I can do about that, but there is, a bunch of steps that I can take moving forward, like you said, to kind of build and flourish from here. And like you said, it became one of your best dives. I think that story within itself is beautiful.
Yeah, and one of the key components I learned in moving forward was that to move forward, a lot of times you got to move backwards. It seems counterintuitive. Like, I hit the board, I need to get this dive back. You're not just going to go straight up and do it again. You have to take steps backward and kind of work backward from the incident or the injury that occurred and think of the necessary steps to get back to where you want to be. And for me, that was starting at the very beginning of doing jumps on the side of the pool and working my way back up to 10 meter. And so to be able to move forward, you said it best, like, you have to recognize what happened. You have to be real with the situation. And you also have to break it down and understand, why did that happen? How can I prevent that from happening in the future?
Yeah. I think now that I'm starting to experience this, but so you made a whole film on that experience called Blood in the Water, correct?
Yeah, so I was actually just an actor in a film by Brian Blum. He's a, movie producer out in New York City. And I actually got that role in that film kind of by like this weird chance. He reached out to me because he was looking for a stunt person for that film who was a diver who could do a reverse 3.5 off 10 meter. And as we got in a call, we were talking about the film and he was explaining what the film was about. And I was like, bro, this is straight up my story. You know, there's different pieces of like the relational aspects in the movie that aren't my story, but the story of, you know, me at a big meet or getting ready for a big meet, doing this exact same dive I did in real life, hitting my head in this journey to get back on the board to do it again. So when he found that out, and I was in film school at the time, I was a sophomore at Purdue, and we had this conversation of, you know, well, do you just want to be the actor in it? And so I jumped on that opportunity. So I did all the stunts in it, did all the real diving. You know, me hitting the platform in the film is definitely CGI, but it was a unique experience being someone that loves film, was working on getting a film degree. And yeah, it just so happened that it was pretty close to my exact story.
It's so the reason why I brought that up too is like I've recently, the last person that was on the podcast, Jack Linderman, a filmmaker, he's currently helping me build out a film and he's making the whole film on my Tokyo experience. And I got to kind of almost relive and reanalyze what happened. And I kind of, I knew there was that film that you did. And I don't know if there is a connection like that. Like I'd never, and he was a really good interviewer for pulling out, you know, pieces to get more interesting content for, or not even interesting content, but like content for the situation. Were you able to kind of reconnect and almost relook at the kind of the injury or the incident itself and kind of like almost relearn from it?
Yeah, it was definitely a unique experience because up to that point, I really didn't give much thought to my head injury. It was one of those things because I didn't remember it. I really didn't focus on it too much. Once I got that 307 back, I just kind of did the dive and I was comfortable with it and really never thought about it. But once I was in that film and, you know, every day I'm on set, I'm at the pool, we're doing this scene that I need to have these specific emotions that I'm feeling. It really did take me back to a place of immediately following that incident of emotions I was feeling then, trying to recover, trying to cope with what was happening. And so it kind of took me back to that place, but it gave me more of a perspective of thankfulness of, man, now that I'm older and I'm recognizing truly how insane of an experience this is for an athlete to go through. It was just such a tough thing for me to completely separate myself from that experience like I had in the past. And so I really, at that time, started to understand how, you know, lucky and blessed I was to walk away from that and just how far I've come from such a scary incident like that as well.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible because that was always something for me that I've been able to watch for you and to see that because I mean I knew that was one of your best dives, and then hearing that story when I got to Purdue just like baffled me because I've always been someone that's been fairly anxious on 10 meter because it took me like about 2 years to jump off, and it just you know it freaked me out. It was like a bully, and then I got to see you kind of walk up there and just own it. And then to especially put that story together with one of your best dives, I was like, it's like I need to figure out how he was able to, you know, conquer this fear. And it's you know, like Vince Panzano says, like you kind of have to become the bully, and you can't let the 10 meter bully you.
Yeah. That's one of the things too with platforms specifically. You can't hesitate. You can be nervous, but you've got to control your nerves because the second you hesitate or you let the nerves get the best of you, that's where the mistakes come in. That's where injuries can occur the most. That's where you're going to smack. And, you know, another good example of that was in Mexico in 2015, doing a front 4.5. I was terrified of that pool. I wasn't seeing any of my spots and I hesitated just a split second and landed flat on my back. And that sent me down this road of being terrified of the dive and spent a month and a half trying to get that back before the world championships. And it's crazy what just a moment of hesitation can do to your ability to do something you've been so good at for so long.
Yeah. Have you been able to connect pieces like that to, let's just say life or business outside of the diving well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to anything in life, you really need to commit and be confident to what you're doing because if you're going into something, let's say, for example, like I go and do speaking engagements, and if I get up on a stage and I let my nerves get the best of me and I hesitate in my speech, everyone in the audience is going to see that. They're going to feel that, and it's going to take the immersion out of the story. Or if I'm working on, a marketing campaign, if I'm sitting there questioning what's going to work or what's not going to work and end up not making a concrete decision when I need to, the campaign is going to suffer. And so it's a really good lesson from diving that, if I hesitate too much, something bad might happen, or I might not have the control over something that I need to ensure it goes well. And that goes across everything in life. Whether you're in relationships, you need to have that confidence in the person you're having a conversation with too, so you're not just wavering back and forth. And it's super important. These are things you don't think about when you're in the sport of how they're going to apply later in life, but the older I get, the more I see these things come out day after day.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been the beautiful part for me, is being able to connect with, obviously I'm starting a lot of this podcast with just like warm connections, people that I know,
Mm-hmm.
people that, I want to first talk to and just start to get the wheels rolling. And, having Laura Wilkinson or having David Colturi, like it's such a important piece, and it's such a very, I don't know, it's mind boggling to be able to see some of these people that have achieved so much, and then for them to start to see consistent patterns of what they've realized, or again, they start to achieve great things outside of the pool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the beautiful part that I've been seeing is, well, it's just they've been utilizing what they learned or what they struggled with in the pool, or on, in Coulturi's case, on a cliff. But like
Mm-hmm.
they've been able to pull all of these beautiful pieces in and then actually utilize them. And I know it
Mm-hmm.
goes vice versa, and you can utilize a lot of things in life to play into your diving well. And I've heard this multiple times now too, and I've really liked this piece of, Jack Linderman kind of brought up his faith. Laura brought up her faith, and
Mm-hmm.
I think there is that piece of there's high performance in everything we do, and obviously it
Mm-hmm.
starts to sound icky, I'll say, when it gets to something like spirituality, because you don't necessarily want that to be a high performance thing, but there is,
Mm-hmm.
performance. Well, how can I really utilize this to be better, to let go of control? Do you feel like your faith is kind of played into, let's say, even that smack, and then even just like hitting your head on the platform?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the important thing for me with my faith and my sport is it gives my sport purpose. Because at the end of the day, if I'm doing my sport just to do my sport, I can go and win awards. And the second I'm done diving, none of it really mattered because I'm on to the next thing. And so if I go and I win an Olympic medal and that's my identity, that's great for the moment. But then the next Olympics is going to roll around. Other people are going to win medals. And then if my identity is tied to that specific award I've won, when people stop caring about that, I'm going to think people are stopping caring about me. And that's just not the truth. That's not the reality of the situation. So having my identity rooted in my faith goes so much further than my sport can take me. And it allows me to enjoy the sport more because it takes the pressure off of I'm loved and I'm known and I'm seen and I'm valued as a person, not because I've won X amount of awards, but because it's what was spoken into my life and it's what I believe to be truth. And that just frees me up to enjoy what I'm doing. I can be upset if competitions don't go well, and I can be excited when competitions do go well. But at the end of the day, they're moments I get to experience and things I love doing. But it doesn't hold as much weight as it does for someone who that's all they focus on. And if they don't achieve that, everything crumbles around them. Or they do achieve that, they're loved. And then when people stop caring about that one award one by one, they crumble with it. I don't want to be someone that crumbles with my awards as they rust and as they fade. I want to be me, someone who knows they're valued, knows they're loved, not because of what I do, but because of who I am.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I think I kind of ran into that issue once I was done with Tokyo, and I thought I was done. And not to say that I specifically follow any one religion, but just starting to, dip my foot into, spirituality, religion.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Christian churches, and, there's an interesting piece of recognizing that these things do fade,
Hmm.
and finding your meaning is very important, especially when you're trying to, find your path in life. And
Hmm.
athletics stop at some point. And so recognizing, even if you
Yeah.
don't necessarily care about the people that
Hmm.
are cheering, like, the fans or whatever, because we are a fairly niche sport, so there's not that many fans, but
Yeah.
the path ends. And then so
Hmm.
a lot of athletes are kind of sitting there just like, I don't know what to do from here. And like
Yeah.
that value system does crumble and you don't know
Yeah.
what to do.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing. And even as a person of faith, it's something that you can still struggle with and something I have to constantly remind myself of. I have my NCAA trophies on the shelf over there, and while they look nice, every time I look at them, I'm like, oh man, could I have won more? And so it just goes to show no matter how many you win,
Mhm.
it's never going to be enough for you because you've set this bar of a goal you have. The second you achieve it, you're setting a new goal and a new goal. And you're going to continue to set goals throughout your whole life. But if you focus on this one area of sport beyond your sport being over, you're going to feel like you've never accomplished enough. And I want to be able to step away from the sport of diving whenever that time comes, knowing that I did the best I could. I enjoyed the experience. And that is an exciting part of my life, but it is not who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, not again, yeah, like that last piece too is, I feel like, is so interesting and so important because, you're so hyper fixated on, like, I am a diver. And then you do so
Mm-hmm.
much pertaining to that, around that at all times, that, like, the horse blinders come in and like that's all
Mm-hmm.
you do. And so at some point you become, a diver. And then once
Mm-hmm.
the a diver is done, it's the horse blinders reopen back up, and you're just like, I don't, what's going on. And that was kind of my problem, was I was just like, whoa, where do I go from here?
Yeah, and I think it's so easy for us to fixate on one aspect of our life because, we are divers and it takes up a huge chunk of our day, a huge chunk of our week. But it is so common in today's society, in America especially, to really identify ourselves as something specific. And I think a good example of that is in Atomic Habits by James Clear. Amazing book. Really recommend it for everyone to read just to learn how to set healthy habits in your life. But he does talk about running specifically. Instead of saying, I'm running or I'm going to go running, you have to say, I'm a runner, because it changes something in your brain and it identifies you in a certain way. But I feel like we can take that to an extreme as elite athletes and be like, I'm a diver. That's all I am. That's all I focus on. And that's something I really wanted to be able to separate myself from. Even when I was at the Olympics, it's like, yes, I'm a diver, but I'm also other things as well. It's a big piece of my life, but it is not the entire piece of the pie. And
Mm.
so we need to be able to identify ourselves with the things we do, but we also need to not make them our only identity.
And I love that too, because again, this keeps trying. It starts to interconnect a lot of these podcasts, and I've watched you start cross training and
Mm-hmm.
lifting to fit not just diving, and again, it feels good. I've recognized this with rock climbing, but being able to cross train, there is a phenomenal mental piece to that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because just like you said, you don't end up completely identifying. Like for me now, like, I am a diver and I'm a climber, and for
Mm-hmm.
once I felt like it was healthy to have more than one, and I didn't like
Mm-hmm.
freak out having more than one. And
Yeah.
I've seen, on your stories and stuff like that, that you're starting to do other sports. What are these
Mm-hmm.
other sports? And then, what was the initial aspiration for them?
Yeah, so recently I've started swimming, I've started biking, and I'm hoping to start running soon. And my big goal is I want to complete an Ironman at some point in my life. And the reason I want to do that is I've been through 5 foot surgeries now, and there were points in that journey where I was told, I'm never going to run again, I'm never going to jump again, I'm probably not ever going to walk normally again. And so I was starting to really identify with those things that doctors were saying and was really getting down on myself of, man, if these smart doctors are saying I'm never going to do this again, you know, what am I going to do? And that identity piece started to crumble. And as I started to become healthy from this fifth surgery and this doctor has cleared me to run and start doing all these things, I was like, I'm going to take life by the horns and I'm going to just run with it. And so as part of my recovery, I started swimming, and it turns out I loved swimming. Before this recovery period, I've never really done any cardio exercise before. I've never been a runner. I've never been a swimmer, never been a biker. And so this is all brand new to me, but I fell in love with it and can already swim the Ironman distance. And then I picked up biking, and I've got a group of guys here in Nashville that I go bike with, and have learned that I'm pretty decent at that too, and can bike 30, 40 miles and feel good by the end of it, not feel like trash. And the running piece, I have no idea yet because I'm still in this recovery process, and we'll cross that bridge when I come to it. But the goal is, do these things I've never been able to do because I was told I was never going to be able to do them. And it's probably a stubbornness in me being an elite athlete. Like, if you say I'm never going to do this, I'm going to do it. And now I've got a doctor who's telling me, oh yeah, you can do these things. You're healing up. You're going to be great. And it's just been good for me to have this cross training where I'm not just solely focused on diving. Yeah, I'm focused on diving. I'm focused on getting back in the pool and being the best I can be. But to get there, I'm using these other avenues to maintain my health and build strength in new ways because they're a good mental release for me too. To get in a pool for an hour and a half and just hear the sound of the water swishing by my ears and just me alone with my thoughts is a really therapeutic time for me. While I'm exerting force, it's really nice. And so when I'm doing these extra sports that I'm doing right now, I'm not wearing headphones, not listening to music, just enjoying the silence, because that's where I feel like I can really connect with myself and just connect with my faith on a deeper level.
Yeah, I think it's such a beautiful point. Again, I'm hyped that you said that word specifically too, is silence, because we, especially, I can't speak on springboard, but I'm assuming it's kind of similar. But while you're on the edge of 10 meter, there's a split second, if not a few seconds, of just pure silence. When you get your arms up and everything just kind of like shuts off. And, I kind of recognized the same thing when I started climbing, was while I got on the wall, even if there was distractions or other things happening, there was like this blissful piece of silence. And I can only imagine, doing longer, big sports like Ironman and stuff like that is, there's a long extended piece of silence. And some people drown it out with a podcast or music, but some people sit in it and some people enjoy that. I know, again, people are going to start to, put comments and attack me, but Goggins, I bring him up almost every podcast. Goggins, like,
he's great.
He pushes away from, listening to music. 'Cause like, what are you going to do when the headphones come off? And I think that silence is just so beautiful, and being able to truly cultivate that is special. And I feel like maybe we could all do that a lot more. Do you feel like that's been like super big for you?
Yeah, I used to be a person that drowned out any moment of silence I could. But as of recently, silence has been a huge piece for me of just finding peace in my day. When things are tough or recovery is difficult, instead of turning on music, I'm just sitting in that silence, because that silence is oftentimes where we hear things the loudest, the things we need to hear, the things maybe we don't want to hear, don't want to think about, actually come to light when we give ourselves enough time to just sit and be alone with our thoughts. It's not an easy thing. And the reason I started doing it during this recovery period was the reality of being focused on, okay, an Ironman, that's like 12, 13 hours of constant exercise, and you can't bring your phone, you can't bring your headphones to compete in that. You're just with yourself. You're obviously in a large crowd of people, there's people cheering, but it's kind of like diving. When you're on the end of the platform, there's that moment of silence, and that's the moment that you really have clarity on what you're about to do and feel the most confident. And so if I can be okay in that silence for that long, I think my body is going to do more than I think it's capable of. And there's going to be a lot of peace in that process.
Yeah. I think, and maybe you can kind of touch on this a little bit too, is being able to really force yourself into adversity, especially like an Ironman or a lot of those training sessions. It forces you to be able to get into an ugly place and learn to calm down and
Hmm.
again, listen to the silence and really be able to take adversity in a different mindset. Do you think
Hmm.
that's been pretty applicable, especially when you've had a lot of frustrating surgeries that didn't work? Were you able to kind of utilize, I know this is a little bit more after, but you did a lot of swimming
Sorry, it cut
and
out again.
cardio-esque stuff during, right? I just cut out a good amount for you.
It cut out.
Yeah.
Sorry, it just was silent for like 15 seconds.
Sorry, people listening. We're dealing with some poor Wi-Fi,
It's
but
probably my internet, dude. I have cheap internet. I tell you what.
I was bringing up the fact that you've had 5 foot surgeries, and being
Yeah.
able to utilize these cardiovascular training sessions
Hmm.
allows you to deal with adversity in a different way because you can sit with pain and frustration. Do you feel
Yeah.
like it's helped you over those 5 surgeries?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things that I was really starting to struggle with, after the third surgery, the fourth surgery, and then especially the fifth surgery was I was in so much pain all the time. And I was at a point too where the pain medicine I'm given after surgery wasn't taking away the pain. And I think it's because my body had built up this tolerance because I've had so many surgeries and been on medication for such a long time. And I was really going through a lot of that pain. And as that pain started to die down, I felt like I had a higher pain tolerance, that when I started to go through these cardiovascular exercises, I was able to push myself a lot further than I initially thought I was going to be able to. When I started swimming, I didn't know how far I'd be able to swim or how long I'd be able to swim. And so I was giving myself a goal of like, okay, maybe swim 1,000 yards. And the first time I got in the pool, I did 2,500 yards. And
Mm.
it was one of those things where I realized, because I've been through all these surgeries and I've dealt with so much adversity, I'm mentally able to take my body further than I would have been had I not gone through these experiences. While these experiences suck and going through so many surgeries is terrible and something I definitely don't recommend, it
Yeah.
has made me a stronger person by force, not because I've wanted to become a stronger person, but because I've had to become a stronger person to make it through the physical pain I was dealing with, but also the mental and spiritual pain that I was going through in that moment as well.
Yeah, and it's been interesting for me to be a viewer of this, right? Because I can feel your frustration,
Hmm.
and it is, again, from someone that knows you and that's trained with you quite a bit, even through these foot injuries and then surgeries. To be able
Hmm.
to watch that from the outside is also frustrating because, again, it's hopefully this one's going to be the one, and you have to kind of rinse and
Yeah.
repeat every single
Hmm.
time. Um, Between each surgery, was there kind of a light bulb moment, or was there a specific time for you that, you know, you had to dig a little bit deeper and, you found something out about yourself and you were able to kind of go, okay, no, like we can still push through this. And we're going to make it to maybe the next surgery or when this actually, finds a way to work out.
Yeah, I think, the first surgery, it was kind of run of the mill. I was told things were healing up well. And then, 4 months later, I still couldn't stand, and then was just immediately ushered into a second surgery. And so I really didn't have much time to process what was going on then. And
Mm.
I was just thinking, oh, maybe that was a fluke, a mistake. We'll get it fixed now. But as the surgery started to roll around, it was tough recovering from the second one, but I was diving so soon after, and had that confidence in me of, man, I'm in pain, but I can still do this. The third surgery, I got that surgery. I was in a lot of pain for a long time after. I didn't dive for a about a year after that surgery, and even then I couldn't move my foot much, had a lot of swelling, and it was just a step by step, everything was just going wrong. And so when this fifth surgery rolls around, I'm getting good news that everything looks great, but I'm in the most pain I've ever been in during recovery. I wasn't sleeping at night at all. I wasn't eating. And there were nights I was just, praying that I would fall asleep and hopefully make it to the next morning because the pain was just so tough to bear. And it was in those nights where I'm just sitting, on the floor, on the couch, or in the tub with my foot propped up in a ton of pain, tears down my face, just telling myself, this is hard now, but if I can make it through this, I can make it through anything that life throws at me going forward. And was not easy. And I had, my wife by my side, people by my side, my community here really helping me physically where I needed help and just mentally and spiritually being there for me. But it was a moment with this surgery that every time I'd go see the doctor, my foot would feel just a tiny bit better and I would get good news. And so I would take that, and that would give me the motivation to get to the next doctor's appointment a couple weeks later. And even now, my foot doesn't
Yeah,
feel perfect, but I know it's in
it's kind of
process.
crazy to think about being able to utilize some of these incredibly hard times.
Yeah.
And most people don't want to. And of course, you don't
Mhm.
want to go, well, yeah, let me pick the path that is going to suck. It's going to hurt. But
Mhm.
again, like what you can really learn about in these really dark times, not just about yourself, but maybe even about the people around you and,
Mhm.
what they're willing to do for you within those moments is pretty important. And
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful thing if you can step back and look at the journey and the process and see how many
Mhm.
people are willing to kind of like dive into, you as a person to get you to
Mhm.
where, you were really trying to be.
Yeah, and it just goes to show that people aren't just focused on me because of what I've done and my status of being an Olympian. No, they were focused on me as a person who needs help to get things done or just needs someone to talk to when I'm in a ton of pain and can't see a light at the end of the tunnel. It just goes to show that community when you're going through things as hard as that is so vital to have, because that's a season I would have not gotten through had I been alone on my own. But because I had my wife and people around me that were constantly checking in on me, that gave me that motivation, even if it was multiple times throughout the day, to just keep going, keep pushing through.
Mm. Was there any specific mentors within that time for you that were, really helping with, lighting that tunnel? Or was that more so your faith within that moment that kind of helped you through?
Yeah, going through this season of recovery from this fifth surgery, I haven't really had any specific mentors. Leading up to the Olympics in 2016, David and Adam were my mentors, and they were mentoring me through this entire Olympic process. And then even up to 2021, David was still mentoring me and was right by my side. And now moving to a different state, I didn't have a specific mentor, but I did have my wife, who is incredibly wise, speaking wisdom over me and was doing life right beside me the whole way. I had, my brother-in-law who lives here. He's just been a good rock for me. Anything I need to talk about, he's right there and he's able to encourage me as another man. And on top of that, just having family and friends here, the community is really tight knit in a place like Nashville, which is really cool to see, because you don't ever want to be in a position where you're going through something so hard you have to ask for all this help. But it's nice to know that when things like this happen, there's people who are willing to offer whatever wisdom or whatever you need to you. And so I didn't have a specific mentor, but I had so many people around me that were filling that role of mentoring me just one day at a time.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. And again, I think that's kind of the beauty. There's a lot of negatives to the social space, but there's
Mhm.
also a lot of incredible benefits. And I know you
Mhm.
said you really like Goggins, and I think that's kind of how I connect sometimes when I don't feel like I necessarily have someone, you know, guiding me through a specific scenario. But there are
Mhm.
pretty incredible people that have, you know, done pretty incredible things and then put it on the internet for other people to kind of like digest and go through,
Mhm.
which kind of leads me into something that I've been wanting to talk to you about, was your vlogs. um,
Oh yeah.
your vlogs, and it might seem like something small within the moment while you were doing it maybe, but
Mhm.
I think looking back at it, especially, me looking at that too, is it's pretty inspiring to, one, it's a lot of work. Like, I don't think people really
Yeah.
recognize how much work it is to not just film yourself, then to be a full-time athlete, then to upload. You have school, you have all of these things kind of hammering on
Yeah.
top of you. Talk to me about what was the initial inspiration there, and then, how'd that morph and like flourish for you?
Yeah, so I started making YouTube videos when I was super young, like right when YouTube first came out. And leading into like 2011 and 2012, daily vlogging started to become a huge thing. You had, Charles Trippy was kind of my main inspiration for starting the vlogs. I used to watch his daily vlogs every day when I was in high school. And I was like, oh, I'm getting ready for the 2012 Olympic trials. I think it'd be cool to start daily vlogging and documenting my diving and my everyday life as like 15, 16 year old with this dream of becoming an Olympian. And so I started doing that, and they were such low quality. It was me pulling out like a little pocket camera, little point and shoot, and just filming whatever was on my mind.
Mm.
And I go back and watch a lot of those, and there's diving in some, and there's some where I'm just straight up talking about what's on my mind. And, at the time you don't really recognize it, but now I think back to that and I'm like, man, that was so therapeutic for young Steele to be able to share his emotions, share what he's feeling or what he's learning. And so it seems pretty insignificant at the time, but it was a really unique time for me to just be able to document what I was going through as a teenager with this dream. I did it for 735 days in a row before I took my first break.
Mm.
And then even after that, I daily vlogged through college and through the Olympics. And it was just so cool to do. And I'm so glad I did it, even though, you get the occasional terrible comment or someone making fun of you. It's like, at the end of the day, that stuff doesn't matter. What matters is me and my friends can go back and watch these videos of us playing Guitar Hero in the basement and just reminisce on the good times that we had. And it is something where, as I'm getting back into this training, I want to start filming again.
Mm.
And it's tough for me to separate myself from this high quality filmmaking aspect, because I went to film school, got a film degree. It's really tough for me to just pull out a camera and talk to it now because I'm thinking about, does the shot look right? Is the colors good? All that stuff. But I want to go back through and watch some of those old videos to re-inspire myself to see how simple it is and just be real with them and share my story, because I've met people along the way that are like, oh man, I watched your vlogs. Like, it gave me inspiration to do X, Y, Z. Something I never set out to do was to inspire people with those vlogs. But, anything you do can have a positive impact on someone. So it's important to just jump in and try it.
Yeah. And again, I feel like there's kind of like a resurgence of vlogging, maybe in a different way, because you kind of see people posting on TikTok and on
Yeah.
Instagram, but like there's an element to that. And some people get all jacked up with this, but someone somewhat in the diving world, but Sam Sulik, if you know who that is, like he's doing practically daily vlogs, and people are eating that up. And I watched that, and it made me think about you. I was like, maybe there is a market again, and it's coming back out because everything got so cinematic that people kind of want this grungy vlog back.
Yeah, I think it was cool to watch YouTube go through what it's gone through from, let's just say 2012, where daily vlogging was pull out your flip camera, film your day, upload it online, to 2016, 2017, you've got Peter McKinnon and these guys doing these high quality videos that were amazing to watch, but we kind of got desensitized to the beautiful camera work and the drone shots, and we just want the real stories again. And I think people like Sam Sulek are doing an amazing job at just taking us through his day, telling us, okay, he's on this day of his cut, he's doing this workout, and he's showing it to you, giving his thoughts, and he's just likable and relatable. And there is a market for that, not just in bodybuilding, but every single niche. I think someone doing it really well right now is Molly Carlson with cliff diving and just diving as a whole. Like, she creates amazing videos, and they're not overly produced, they're just really good, high quality videos. So going forward, as I'm starting to get back in the pool, I just want to start filming my dives more and talking to the camera, getting comfortable with that again, just to talk about this journey, because I'm at such a different place now than I was 10 years ago.
And so this is kind of a big piece for me, because I ran through this with even just starting this podcast within itself was there's that initial ick. And I'm assuming you kind of felt that with the, vlogs when you first started way back when. And then, I mean, maybe there's a piece to it still with social media for you, unless, you've done it for so long that you don't get that ick. But how do people kind of get through that?
You just got to get out there and post. I think when we put ourselves out there online, we perceive ourselves in a way that's completely different from everyone else. Take an example, your favorite influencer, whatever it is, you watch their videos, their Instagram stories, they're talking to the camera, they're comfortable with it. You're not thinking, oh, this is uncomfortable to watch. It feels natural. But when you're in front of the camera, you feel like it's unnatural because you're not talking to a person, you're talking to a camera. It feels weird. You really have to separate this idea that you're talking to a camera. You have to pretend like you're talking to a person, because at the end of the day, there is a person on the other end of that camera. When I was young, starting vlog, I honestly didn't have that ick. I was just so excited to film because I'd seen people I looked up to doing it, and it looked like so much fun. And I had other friends in my same friend group, at church and in high school and stuff, that were also daily vlogging. So it was kind of a normal thing. We'd all get together, we'd all pull out our cameras, so it didn't feel weird. The older I've gotten, the weirder it's felt, because I've developed this idea that, oh, well, this isn't natural, this isn't normal, this isn't what everyone's doing. But if you look at it, everyone's on social media, everyone's filming themselves talking. So it's a tough thing to break out of this box of, oh, this is weird, I don't like hearing my own voice. But just know that what you're saying and what you're filming, someone's getting value from it, and that is worth so much more than any ick you might feel while filming it.
So even with that then, right? Because, now that people are posting a lot, and even just like looking at your content, um, what's your mindset when you're trying to kind of build and cultivate a following and people that want to see what you're trying to post? Is there something specific you think about, or you kind of just post what you want and see what sticks?
When you're first starting out, I would definitely say post what you want and see what sticks. And don't be afraid to try a bunch of different options, a bunch of different formats, because you never know what's going to be successful. You can set out from the start and design this specific campaign of videos you want to do that you think are going to hit well, and it can perform terribly. And then you just post some simple dives, or you just talking to the camera, and that performs well. You don't know what your audience wants until you create something like that they resonate with. So you can take examples from other creators you follow and mimic that. That's a really good way to get started. But your specific audience that you create, that you cultivate, that you are building up, is going to be completely different from everyone else's audience. So just start creating content, see what sticks, go back, learn why it's sticking, and just try to recreate that and add a new flair each time so that it doesn't get stale.
So even for people that are looking into this though, and I don't know if this is something you pay attention to or you just kind of follow that format that you just said, but there's all these algorithms that are changing, and people are trying to, well, how do I post once a day? Do I post 3 times a week? Is that something that you ever thought about, or again, you just kind of went
Well,
back to, content's king?
yeah, I mean, I used to think about a lot of that stuff, but the reality of the situation is all these platforms are changing their algorithm so fast that by the time you think you've figured out the algorithm, there are already 7 or 8 algorithms past what you think you've figured out. And so the biggest thing with social media is you just have to be on the platform. You have to create content that people will resonate with, because at the end of the day, content truly is king. There are pieces where you need to be posting a certain amount, but it's not a specific 2 times per day at this time. It's no, you just need to have a consistent schedule that works for you, that your audience can depend on and rely on.
Mm. And then just for kind of going back to the vlog really quickly,
Mhm.
I've talked about utilizing journaling as a really important piece to help my training get to its next level by actually being able to look back at a practice and kind of digest what happened. And so I'm like actually learning from each practice. Do you feel like your vlogs kind of did that, since you can literally go back and see what you were talking about, what you were,
Yeah.
the dives themselves? Was that kind of helpful in that way?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I would film my practices, and then I would film after the practice talking about how I was feeling. And, I journal, but I don't ever journal about diving or my practice specifically. It was kind of a separate thing for me. So the vlogs, like, I can film these videos and I can go back and watch them, and I can see myself talking about that experience of that practice later on and learn, okay, this was X amount of days before competition. I felt this way. That competition went really well. Maybe I need to mirror what I was doing there. And so it's been a huge piece for me, because if you're just practicing and never trying to learn from that practice, you're going to have a cap of how good you can get or how much better you could get. But if you take the time to actually digest the training session you just did, whether that's journaling, whether that's vlogging and going back and documenting the way you were feeling or the way your body's feeling, how the dives went, doing that is going to allow you to break through a new barrier with your training.
Yeah, I love that. And that was, again, one thing I was kind of looking at. I was like, dude, it's kind of like an upgraded journal to where,
Yeah.
you almost get to see the emotion. I can go back and try to remember how I was feeling, but sometimes that's skewed by maybe ego or whatever could be kind of changing what I thought happened. But on video, you can, outside of like literally internally, you get to see like what's on your face. You get to see what
Yeah.
happened. You get to see maybe a coach's reaction, other people's reaction. And so I feel like, thinking about it in terms of performance, a vlog could almost be very beneficial for someone just to heighten or speed up how quickly they're learning. Just if they feel like, "Hey, I'm kind of lagging behind here, like what could potentially help me here is maybe vlog a practice or two and see what happens."
Yeah, and it's a thing too where like it might feel weird to vlog a practice, to film your dives and then sit down and talk to the camera at home later, but for some people it might feel weird to do a practice and sit down and write about how that practice went too. Whenever you're doing something new like that, it's going to feel uncomfortable, it's going to feel weird, but it's going to allow you to become a better athlete, a better person, and ultimately achieve the things that you want to achieve. And so you've got to push through this self adversity you're throwing on yourself of discomfort to get to the place you want to be.
Yeah, and then just tapping into that just on the performance side. We've seen you win a bunch of NCAA medals, international medals, and then, Olympic silver medal. I think one thing that people have been able to catch up on you is his in competition focus is out of this world. And honestly, as a training partner of yours for, a good amount of years, I could say the exact same thing in training too, that I almost felt like you were almost more focused in practice than competition. Was that on purpose? And then again, how do you build out that just crazy mental fortitude?
Yeah, to answer that first question, yeah, it was absolutely on purpose to be more focused in training than I was competition, in terms of just like being in the zone, because in training is where you are fine tuning your dives, you're making the corrections. When you're in the competition, you don't need to be making any corrections. You don't need to be fine tuning everything. Everything has already been set in place. You just need to go and execute what your body already knows how to do. A lot of this stuff I learned, through trial and error of going to competitions, trying different routines. And the routine that I saw that worked for me was mirroring exactly what David Badaya did at the 2012 Olympics. He would do his dive and then he'd run away from the pool into some back room and go reset. And so I took that and I was testing it out, and it really worked for me, not focusing on my scores and letting judges' scores affect me, because the smallest little emotion change based off me not getting a score I wanted or getting a higher score than I thought I was going to get, that would affect my dives a lot more than I realized. So when I was in training, I was really trying to dial in that same mentality of the second I step on that platform or on that board, I am focused and I want to make this feel like a competition. In between dives, I can relax and I can just have a good time, hang out, we have good conversations. But the second I'm on the end of the platform, it's a competition for me, so that when I get to that competition, it's just like practice.
To kind of touch on that though is I think it was almost easier for me to watch you do that, to watch you be so hyper focused when you were not doing synchro with me, but when you were training springboard. Because then, it was one thing for me, I guess, especially when I was kind of younger coming into the scene, I was super excited. And, I did want to talk a lot, and especially just try to like, gain knowledge from you. And it was exciting for me. But to be able to watch you individually on springboard and then synchro on springboard, I actually really got to see that come into play pretty aggressively, especially when, your synchro partner is not some, super hyper excited freshman.
Yeah.
It's Dave.
Yeah.
And he's, a veteran and he's done it all. And so
Yeah.
I got to watch both of you actually be incredibly focused at the same time.
Mhm.
How was that difference? Because I can kind of play into that too now, being one of the older guys. But was there a huge difference between diving with someone younger and then again diving with someone that was more seasoned and just kind of neutral in how they acted during practice?
On paper, yeah, it's different, but everything I've really learned about being focused in training and in competition, I learned from Dave. I learned from watching him at the Olympics. I learned from diving synchro alongside of him for so many years on platform and on springboard. And so, when I was diving with Dave, I knew he was going to be focused, but whenever I'm doing synchro, I'm not worried about my synchro partner. I'm still just in this zone of I need to make my dive the best it can possibly be. Same in training, same in competition. And so when you and I were diving together on the platform, we have different personalities in the way that we dive, and that's good. Not everyone needs to be the same. I needed to be hyper focused because that's how my routine was, and that's how I felt like I could best prepare. But you prepared completely differently, and I was just trusting that you were doing what works best for you. So yeah, it's different in a sense because, Dave was hyper focused on the board, but I'm not worried about my synchro partner so much as I just don't want to be the weak link when it comes to synchro diving. I want to be the best on the team. And it's tough to do when you're diving with an Olympic champion and diving with you, who's an insane platform diver. I always had this mentality of, I don't want to be the one that lets this team down because I know my synchro partner is doing everything they can to not let this team down as well. And so it was just that
Yeah, I
added
mean, I
pressure
think
of
it's
I need
kind
to be
of
focused.
it's a really beautiful thing too, being able to experience that in person and learn that at a younger age. And I understand our ages, you know, are actually fairly close, but you were at Purdue, you've been in the international scene, and so I felt substantially younger with you, and it felt like a big brother type of scenario because I mean, you brought me onto the international stage. Like I was, because of you and doing synchro with you, that was how I kind of was able to dip my toe in the deep end there. And I got to learn so much. I got to watch you compete at competitions. And so you were my Dave. And I got to, utilize so much of, your, how you would, compose yourself and how you would deal with adversity. And I actually got to kind of eat that up. And it's one an honor for me. And then it's cool to see that it's flipped and I'm starting to do that for younger divers and,
Yeah.
kids that are coming up. And it's kind
And
of
that's
a
how it
beautiful thing.
goes. That's the cycle of all sport, especially our sport, is, Dave learned from someone ahead of him. I learned from Dave. You learned from me. Someone's learning from you. The next generation is going to learn from them. And it's just building up better and better generation of athletes each generation that passes through. And it's something that I hope we never lose in the sport, is having a veteran do synchro with someone who's really never been on the scene before, because there's so much growth that happens for the younger athlete in such a short amount of time that is so valuable.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I think, and I talk about this fairly often, but mentors are very important. And I got lucky because, you became one for me. And I got to see that, hey, like, he's not going out and partying every weekend. And there was a lot of these things that, I didn't entirely understand. And I got to kind of pick apart over time. I didn't necessarily act upon it right off the bat, but eventually I did. And then I understood it. And I was like, oh, wow. I do feel a lot better on Monday, funny enough.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's cool to see that, hey, Steele actually did push against the grain of society. And, you weren't boastful about it. You weren't loud about it. You just put in the work, and the people that wanted to see it saw it. And I
Yeah.
think that's the beautiful thing about you being my mentor is, I ended up following that path and I start to push that message. And do you feel like you still kind of push that message, or again, you don't really push the message, but you live it? Is that
Yeah.
something that you even recognize you were doing?
Yeah, well, I think I started training full time in the sport at the age of 10. And so before my brain was even somewhat developed, I was focused on the sport and was training at the sport full time. And I think a big piece of that was, diving full time. And then in the evenings, all my friends at home were just from my youth group at church. And so instead of, in high school, like people go out and party, we would all get in a basement, drink root beer, and play Call of Duty all night long. And so that was what was fun for me. I wasn't like a party person. I wasn't doing all these extracurriculars outside the pool because I was so focused on being the best athlete I could. And, as college rolls around, it just for me was that same path of I don't really want to go do these things. I just want to feel good for training on Monday. I want to feel good Saturday morning weights. And I had that example of someone else doing that exact same thing with Dave at the pool every day. He's out of college and he's getting enough sleep. He's doing all the recovery stuff. It's like, if I want to be as good as him, I need to mimic what he's doing. And I was just doing that from such a young age because I was training full time. And so it's not really a message I push of like, don't party, don't do all this. It's like everyone's different, but scientifically speaking, you need sleep, you need water, you need to eat healthy, you need to kick your feet up and relax. And so I feel like everyone learns at different times the importance of that. And I just learned it at a super young age because it's all I was really surrounded by.
Yeah. I guess I'm glad I was able to kind of pull that out then, because, now I do. We got lucky too with Adam kind of pushing, hey, like the 72-hour rule, like make sure you are recovering. And, he did make it quite clear of, hey, like you're on this team because you're trying to achieve something big and potentially even bigger than yourself. And so being able to recognize that these things, these extracurricular things can really play into your performance, especially once you've gotten past the social part of, oh, I feel like I'm not gonna have a social life if I don't do these things.
And that's what I had seen from just conversations when I was, in high school and college. They're like, well, don't you want to have a social life? And I'm like, I do. I've got so many friends that I play video games with, I have fun with, we go ride bikes, whatever it is. My social life isn't surrounded around one specific thing with party and drinking, whatever it is. I just had a different friend group, and you can cultivate a friend group no matter where you're at, no matter what your hobbies are, what you enjoy. There are people that enjoy those same things as you. For me in high school, it was my friends in Call of Duty and Smash Bros and stuff like that. And, now it's people I swim with, I bike with. And so those communities change, but you have to understand a social life doesn't just come from partying. It comes from so much beyond that.
Yeah. And I think it's you do kind of morph into the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And being able to find people that aren't just so interlocked in kind of they almost have to like, hey, if I don't have my weekend of going out, like I'm gonna crumble. And being able to find people that can like naturally decompress or naturally have fun, naturally socialize, you start to see like there is a healthy world out there that is more than able to conversate without having to have 16 shots and 4 beers.
Yeah. I think, there's nothing wrong with, going to a bar and hanging with friends or whatever it is. But, if you have to be out there having 6, 7, 8 drinks just to have a social life, you're looking for the wrong type of social life. You're minimizing yourself and your identity to be someone who believes they can't socialize without these things. And when you separate yourself from that and realize there's more to me than just this one thing, and I can socialize with people outside of that, you've got so much room for just enjoyment in so many areas. And so I think it's just so important for everyone to really challenge themselves too and find a community outside of that.
Yeah. 100%. Just to end this off, just because I am interested in this and I love this after part. So you plan on doing triathlons. Is there anything else that you plan on doing once you've kind of tied the knot on diving?
Yeah, I really don't know. I'm just kind of taking it one thing at a time. Like I'm using the swimming and the biking as a lot of cross training right now and have a goal of, doing a half Ironman and Ironman at some point in my life. And those will be things I don't know if I'll do it once or if I'll do it multiple times, but I'm enjoying that process right now. Another process I enjoy is just music and playing guitar, playing
Mm,
bass. I don't ever plan to like be in a band or play on a stage, but those are things and skills that I love to develop and love to get better at. And so that's another thing that I'm still just going to pursue in my free time because it's something that brings me joy. It doesn't have to be this elite level thing that I'm pursuing for me to enjoy it. And so, outside of that, it's just making sure my body's taken care of for the rest of my life after diving, whenever that is. And I think all this cross training is setting the foundation for that right now.
beautiful. Well, Steele, thank you for your time. Hopefully we can pick out all of these great pieces. I thought this was a super beneficial and insightful podcast. Um, and if this gets a little razzle frazzled, maybe we can reshoot this at some time. But
You
thank
just
you for
let
your
me
time.
know. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm stoked to be here and just honored to, have these conversations. And I know the people watching this are really going to glean a lot of information, not just from me or the other guests, but from you as well, because you're asking tough questions and giving good insight that I know your fans and the people that follow you are really just going to get a lot of good wisdom and information from. So you're doing a great thing.
I appreciate it. Well, Steele, we'll chat soon, and I hope you have a great and plentiful weekend.
Absolutely. You too. Take care.
All right, thanks.
Peace.